Birthright citizenship allows for predatory birth tourism practices in which foreign-born women come to the United States on tourist visas to give birth so that their children become U.S. citizens. The majority of these birth tourists come from one of America's greatest adversaries, including China. Because of advances in technology, lax surrogacy laws, and the incorrect understanding of the 14th Amendment, countries are now using international surrogacy programs to rent wombs in America.
So this is truly frightening, and it's shocking to me that there is so much debate about this. I think if we're arguing about this, we've sort of lost the concept of what citizenship is and what it means.
Birthright citizenship allows for predatory birth tourism practices in which foreign-born women come to the United States on tourist visas to give birth so that their children become U.S. citizens. Once the children turn 21, they can sponsor their parents to become legal U.S. residents so the family can immigrate to America. Concerningly, the majority of these birth tourists come from one of America's greatest adversaries, including China. Because of advances in technology, lax surrogacy laws, and the incorrect understanding of the 14th Amendment, countries are now using international surrogacy programs to rent wombs in America. Mr. O'Brien, there is a back and forth in U.S. policy regarding scrutiny and restrictions for birth tourism, including 2 different policies issued in 2015 and 2020. Where does our federal policy currently stand on this issue, and is it strong enough to prevent this practice of essentially renting wombs for surrogacy to have anchor babies?
Well, the fact is that we don't have any policy specifically on this. We have the immigration laws, but as we've seen with the last administration, if the government refuses to enforce those, they have no effect whatsoever. And there's anywhere from 125,000 to 300,000, depending upon whose estimates you're looking at, incidences of birth tourism each year. The implications of this are absolutely frightening if you look at it long term. During the Cold War, the Russians had a program called the Illegals Program, where they inserted agents of influence and spies into the United States with documents that made it appear that they were lawfully here. If those people had children, they became U.S. citizens, and regularly those children were trained, despite the fact that they allegedly had a claim to United States citizenship, they were trained to be against the interests of the United States. So this is something that is dangerous. We need a firm policy against it. And it is something that places the United States at a great deficit in terms of national security.
Well, and I want to focus specifically on this issue. According to the Heritage Foundation, they have reported on a new birth tourism tactic which uses international commercial surrogacy to exploit America's misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment and our lax surrogacy laws. Intended parents who are foreign nationals use a surrogate in or transported to the United States, and the surrogate may be an American woman who then gestates a child for a fee, allowing foreign nationals to essentially rent a room or buy a baby. Mr. O'Brien, under the current wrongful interpretation of the 14th Amendment, this child would gain U.S. citizenship, wouldn't they?
Yes, they would, and because the Immigration and Nationality Act has become a muddle under the weight of misinterpretations about various effects of provisions of the Act, that places the United States in a position where people with no connection to the United States who simply want to be here because they either don't like the political or economic conditions in their home country can then use the citizenship of an adopted child or a surrogate child to try and access the United States and then eventually get lawful permanent residence and become citizens themselves.
So this form of birth tourism actually exacerbates the crisis we have with birth citizenship requiring direct and exclusive allegiance, which should require direct and exclusive allegiance to the United States. Don't you agree?
Yes, it does. It exacerbates it significantly.
Well, what's very interesting is China banned international surrogacy, yet the international industry is disproportionately fueled by Chinese nationals who make up 41.7% of this surrogacy industry. Should this raise national security concerns that China is aggressively participating in a practice that it has banned in its own country?
Yes, China has an established pattern through an organization called the People's Work Bureau of approaching people who have a familial connection to China, regardless of their citizenship, and then pressuring them based on connections to Chinese family members who are still within the PRC to provide intelligence information, whether that be national security information or economic espionage information.
Well, and what's interesting is that these children who are receiving American citizenship, they receive that even if the parents intend to raise them abroad. What are the benefits of having a child with American citizenship?
Well, the benefits of having a child with U.S. citizenship is that child can later sponsor you for lawful permanent residence. It also makes the child eligible for all sorts of things that come along with U.S. citizenship, which is entering and leaving the United States. The implications of that from a national security or criminal perspective are enormous. So this is truly frightening. And it's shocking to me that there is so much debate about this. I think if we're arguing about this, we've sort of lost the concept of what citizenship is and what it means.
Amen. I think you make a very good point. I ask unanimous consent to put into the record an article from July 15, 2024, entitled "The New Face of Birth Tourism, Chinese Nationals, American Surrogates."
I understand more than anyone that we are a nation of immigrants, but there's a difference, stark difference, between giving citizenship to the children of slaves, the children of those subject to the Middle Passage, the children of sharecroppers, and the children of those who were once considered property, and giving citizenship to the children of people who crossed the border illegally, stay in taxpayer-funded luxury hotels, who receive free Xboxes, free cell phones, free flights around the country, and 3 square meals a day. There's a big difference. My great-great-grandfather was born on a plantation, Rosedown Plantation in Louisiana. He had to join the Union Color Guard to gain his freedom. By morphing the Citizenship Clause into something that it wasn't meant to be, it's demeaning to descendants of slaves like me. And not just me who served this country, but my father is a retired colonel. My sister went to West Point as a retired colonel. My brother went to West Point. We are talking about a direct descendant of a slave that earned the right to be in this country and passed that ilk down to his ancestry. People bled for it. People died for it. And it means something. The purpose of the 14th Amendment that President Trump's birthright citizenship executive order is that the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment was never meant to apply to children of illegal or legal aliens. Allowing birthright citizenship to stay in place dilutes the citizenship of not just Black Americans like me, but every single American citizen that had to earn it the right way. Let's say this in black and white. Either you're a U.S. citizen or you are not. Now, the left has spent decades cheapening what it means to be an American citizen. They've quite literally been chipping away at the basic value of American citizenship. They pretend to be altruistic, but we know the truth. Ozzy Osbourne's daughter said on The View that we have to let illegal immigrants in this country because who else will clean our toilets? We hear it all the time. Who will pick our crops? And even though that we know that American citizens are the majority of those people picking our crops, we know what you're insinuating. And all this must end now. Mr. O'Brien, earlier you brought up birth tourism and how it's an issue of national security. Could you kind of expound on that and talk about why that's an issue? As somebody that served this country, this is near and dear to my heart.
Sure. If we give U.S. citizenship to absolutely anyone who is born on our soil, that takes the United States out of control of who becomes a U.S. citizen. And since, as everyone here knows, the people are the government of the United States, that puts us in a position where we could be allowing people who are citizens of adversary nations to be coming here, having children who gain U.S. citizenship, and then are trained to be adversaries of the United States. It puts them in a position where they can get jobs with security clearances, they can join the military, they can work in the defense industry, which they would not otherwise be able to do.
So over the course of the last 4 years, have there been people that have entered our country that are our adversaries, that have come to this country that we know of, and had children?
Yeah, there have been a massive number of people who have come here. And not just over the last 4 years, it was happening before. I
Yes.
worked in the national security apparatus of the Department of Homeland Security, and I worked on many cases where that had happened.
Is there any other country in the world that you know operates like this? I'm saying this from the standpoint of somebody that's deployed to Saudi Arabia and other countries around the world. This would never happen anywhere else, by the way. Can you name a country in modern or recent history that has behaved like this, and what has been the outcome of this type of behavior? Meaning that is this even a sustainable model given the number of people that have entered this country over the course, especially the last 4 years?
No, it's not a sustainable model. The only other place where it existed was in a number of the Latin American countries, and most of them did away with it after they were attempting to attract migrants in order to build their industries and build the number of people living in those countries. So this is something that's nearly non-existent.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. The left throws love thy neighbor in our face, and they say that we have to have open borders in order to be nice to people. Well, I ask them to tell the left, we have a bunch of neighbors right here in our country that are Americans. You see, your neighbors are the homeless veterans that you drive by to work. Our neighbors are the wayward teens running away from a bad home environment. Your neighbors are the families who just got evicted from their apartment. What do all those neighbors have in common? They're all Americans. And let's use our American taxpaying dollars to put Americans first. Newsflash, this is why President Trump is our president, because it's past due that we put the American citizen first. And once we solve our issues here, I'm a Christian. By God, let's help everybody else. But at this point, we have enough problems to fix in our own country.